Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. You know you are welcome anytime. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 13th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. We're here to grow in our journey together. I'm Milan Starcic. This is my co-host, Andrew Norman, and today our guest is Chris C. We're three souls on the path of recovery with a desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris?
Sure. I'm Chris, and I'm a recovering addict. I have my clean date is May of 19th of 1993. I live in Long Island, New York, on the North Shore, about 50 miles outside of Manhattan. I'm all in with recovery. Big advocate of and fan of anybody that's willing to try this way of life. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I hope that folks keep coming to meetings, specifically Narcotics Anonymous, until it becomes the best thing that's ever happened to them. That's it.
I agree wholeheartedly. So before we get any further in, I would just like to pause for 1 second. I would like to turn your microphone up, Chris. If we could go into settings, and one of them will be audio. And if you just clicked like 2 notches more on your microphone, I feel that because Andrew and I have got these fancy microphones, uh, I don't want you to be overpowered. And I was just told that that happened yesterday on one podcast with
I can
someone.
hear you just fine.
Let's
Yeah,
go
but
down a
it's
little
us,
bit. You want us
me
to
and
go
you.
down a little bit?
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's just do that.
You guys are fine. Can you not hear me?
You're just a bit quiet. Yeah,
It'll be on the playback, Chris. We can hear you fine. It'll just be on
here
the
we go.
show itself. Is that a little
Okay.
better? Is that a little better?
Yeah, that's probably good there.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're,
so
we're bringing our levels down to you, Chris. So it's
yeah,
like
just
all
so when someone's got their headset on, they can hear all three of us talk. I just
That's
think it's really to have the balance is the most important thing. Whether we're high or low, people can adjust that further. So, inside your finding of recovery, Chris, can you tell us what the pivotal moment when the program sparked a recovery fire in your heart? What changed from you just being an addict wanting to use to fundamentally having that recovery fire and wholeheartedly, pursuing your recovery?
well. I believe that happened April 1st, 1987. That's when I came into recovery. If I'd known what day of the week it was, I wouldn't have come in. That would have been a good enough reason to use another day. But here in the States, that's April Fool's Day.
But what was the thing that happened on that day that
Yep.
you saw in the program that you wanted, and what took you, to go take further steps?
I understand the question.
Yeah.
I was getting there. The thing that happened to me is I realized that I was using against my will. I no longer had the choice as to whether or not I was going to use. It was going to happen, and regardless of what I had to do to make that happen, and there had to be another way. I had a couple of suicide attempts, um, and I felt terrible having failed at my suicide attempts. Like I couldn't even do that. I'd lost so many jobs over the years. I'd lost so much respect from every aspect of my family. Um, I was so on the outside looking into everybody. And, they say that we can feel alone in a crowd. And that's true. I felt that way. Um, I couldn't trust anybody, and I could not be trusted. And when I got into this facility in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey in April of '87, I something had to change, and so I was willing to investigate all possibilities. That's how it started. I was so broken, so hurt, so damaged, so much in pain, emotional, physical, everything. I was willing to try a new way of life.
So
I
from
think
what
willing.
for what you were saying there, today's topic is trust.
How about that?
So, can you tell us what that means to you inside and outside of recovery?
Well, I'd prefer to speak about recovery
Hmm.
because everybody that I've encountered, and I currently sponsor 27 guys, and some of these guys I've been sponsoring for decades. Um,
Thank you for your service, man. God, it's the highest form of service,
Dude, I couldn't do it without you.
man.
How do you sponsor 27 people? One phone call at a time.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
But this is the best thing I've ever done. So I'm all in. But uh, I was amazed at my reluctance to jump into trust in recovery. Now, for years, I'd been um, introducing, doesn't matter how we did it, but introducing powder into my system, hoping that I was getting what I was paying for. Um, Sticking my hand in the hole of a wall with money in it and hoping that they put something that I'm looking for back in my hand. And then I get into recovery and I got an issue with trust. Seriously? Really?
And
It's kind of a dynamic that I had an epiphany like, really? Seriously? But the truth is I've been screwed over so many times by so many people and have screwed over probably like number or in excess of who screwed me. And, it was just the way it is on the street. And I can't imagine it's gotten any better.
I don't think so.
I do believe, yeah, exactly. I do believe that if somebody is willing um, to try this way of life, to bet their lives on recovery, then I believe that I have a responsibility to make sure that they're not let down. So, in terms of trust, it has several forms in recovery. One is if I'm representing Narcotics Anonymous, speaking in a meeting or doing this or whatever, and I don't speak for Narcotics Anonymous. I'm just another bozo on the bus. I'm just,
Hmm.
my experience. That's all it is. Uh, but if I'm representing Narcotics Anonymous or I'm speaking about recovery in front of a group of people, I need to project trustworthiness, and it's something that doesn't come right out of the gate because I got to tell you, for many years, people could tell I was lying because my lips were moving. You really couldn't. I didn't even know what was real, for like a year. I had no idea. And, but I desperately needed to fit in. And so I had people in my life in the 80s that trusted me. And you know what? One of the ways they trusted me is they said, we need somebody to make coffee. And I'm like, I'm your guy. But I'd never made coffee in one of those big, like 40 cup urns, never in my life. Um, and so they had to teach me how to make coffee. And once I got the hang of that, then I took on another commitment. Maybe I became the greeter at the door. Maybe I would always set up and clean up. Back in those days, we could smoke in meetings, so I took on the ashtray commitment, cleaning ashtrays, and we'd have to wash the coffee mugs or whatever. So I was given responsibilities, and I was trusted with those responsibilities to show up, which was not my strong suit, to show up on time, again, a de facto weakness of mine, not now, but then, um, and also to execute on the job that I said I was going to do. So that's I didn't want to let them down because I'd let myself down and everybody else in my life down for so many years.
I
But
remember it being a struggle in early recovery just to read the sheets. Like
dude,
I was praying they wouldn't give me the long sheet because my
Yeah.
lungs felt so screwed up at that point and my brain felt so frazzled. I was like, please give me the shorter one just so I don't sound breathless and out of control by the end of the page.
And then you see the guys that get up there and read it. Like I had a guy in my first home group that I was in, and he would be riding down the road, shifting an 18-wheeler, reading the 12 traditions, not even really looking at the screen. And I'm like, man, there's something going on here. He's got to read those things for a reason.
after you do it a few thousand times, you kind of get the hang of it.
Yeah, I talk about him to this day. I was gonna ask you, Chris, just real quick. Do you find it easier to trust people inside the program or trust people outside the program now that you've been in it for a long time? Because I know being in it as long as you have, you've obviously created relationships outside of this and had to probably work or whatever it is. Do you find it easier to trust people in and outside? And what's the dynamic there?
I would say I know people in the program better than I know people outside of the program. People that are in the program are a little more predictable. Um, you know, I kind of know where they're at, and I've become a pretty good judge of character over the course of my recovery. And again, I've been doing this for a minute, so I had some practice. And I've sat with a sponsee in my living room and watched him case my house. I'm like, he's checking it out to rob it later. I'm like, dude, stop doing that.
And you're all in it. Yeah.
He's
That's
like, what?
crazy.
He's like, what? I'm like, stop doing what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I did it.
Bro,
And that can help.
I wrote the book on it.
Well, I know. I don't even get a footnote, but I have been involved in nefarious activity in the past, and so I know what he was doing, and that
Yeah.
gives me some comfortability that I know what time of day it is in recovery. I don't
Mm.
expect exemplary behavior from a newcomer. I don't expect honesty from a newcomer. I don't expect anything from a newcomer. I just hope that they stay clean for the rest of today. I hope that they become interested in a spiritual path. I hope that they are entranced and excited eventually by recovery. And I hope that they learn this way well enough to be able to save somebody else's life. And that in doing that, we exponentially grow. It's one thing to grow in numbers, it's another thing to grow in spiritual experience.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
If you're not
Yeah, I
on
agree.
if you're not on that train, you're not going to get to the station. And it's important for me to take this seriously enough to do that work again and again and again. And
Mm.
I've over the years taken hundreds of guys through the steps. Back in 1987, when I got out of the facility, there was um, nobody around that could sponsor in NA, so we had to go to a different fellowship, and we would actually scratch out alcohol in that fellowship's literature and write in our drugs, and but then eventually, I mean, from where we were in 1987 to where we are today, has been a miraculous and glorious growth curve. But I hope we're catching up spiritually, because it's one thing to get numbers, it's another thing entirely to get spiritual experience. And I think that's it's up to us to show that that's a cool thing to do.
I
So
think
that
that's part of this podcast's purpose.
yeah, I mean, like this is the most fascinating and an amazing thing that's ever happened to me, and I've been through some horrendous things. Many, I guess, Milan knows that my wife killed herself in 2019 behind a relapse that had been going on for 17 years. We met in NA. We got married in NA. There were over 40 members at my wedding. The day we locked in our first mortgage is the day she started using. And I kept hoping that she would continue, come back to recovery. She didn't come back to recovery, but we don't shoot our wounded here in Narcotics Anonymous. We don't we don't shoot the people that aren't doing what we think they should be doing. We accept abstinence. That's fine. You're clean, man. If you're not using, you're clean. And if you're working a step, that's awesome. But if you're not, that's okay. That's really okay. Just come back. Just come back. And she ended up taking her life brutally in November 19th of 2019. And then we had the pandemic and I had no place to go. All the meetings shut down. And that's when I found internet meetings.
Is that what you leaned into during those times? You had to change it up somehow because
there were no physical meetings, dude.
Yeah.
It was just the only thing we could do is get on the computer. And my sponsor said to me, check this out. He had heard from somebody about this, and I ended up in New Zealand on a platform in New Zealand on their second day of opening up a 24-hour marathon meeting. And I camped out on that thing. I was so broken, so sad. My brother-in-law had died about a month and a half after my wife killed herself of an OD in his trailer on a movie shoot in Manhattan. He was an executive producer.
Oh my God.
OD from fentanyl. He left behind 2 little kids.
Chris, that's crazy. Wow. I'm sorry, man.
I had no place to go. So this was a godsend.
Yeah.
And what we've been able to do in terms of electronic media is just phenomenal. And I'm all in it. And I spent every day there for 4.5 years on that particular meeting.
Let me ask you this, Chris. You sponsor, and this is because you sponsor a lot of guys. When that happened to you, how do you stay tapped into being there for those guys when you're kind of, and I know sponsorship is a two-way street, which is kind of a whole nother discussion where like, how do you not let yourself get let down by, you have those sheer numbers of sponsees, right? You want them to maybe call you and reach out. How did, gosh, I know that's a couple questions in there with that,
but this is, first of all, I've had a lot of practice in this. And I don't think anybody starts out being a sponsor well. I don't think that they're going to be good at it.
Amen.
I do know that there's some qualifiers. If you can't keep a secret, maybe you should make coffee.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah.
You can't keep a secret, you're right. Yes, that's your service work commitment is coffee.
Yeah, go make coffee.
Yeah.
Go do something you can't hurt people with. Well, actually, some people's coffee can hurt people.
And not everybody's made for sponsorship, right? Not everybody's made for sponsorship.
That's exactly the point. And but if you can, and you can go to your grave not having, revealed people's secrets, then maybe you can. But then there is a learning curve for imparting spiritual principles to other people and allowing them to manifest the changes within themselves and have their own experience, not a replication of my experience.
Yeah.
That they get to do their own thing. And what I try to do through the sponsorship effort is to empower people. We need to learn how to make good choices. And unfortunately that involves making a bunch of bad choices. And as a sponsor, I've signed myself up for both. So I don't tell people what to do because I don't do what anybody tells me what to do. And I've been doing this a long damn time. I mean, go ahead, tell me something. I was married. My wife found out. Tell me something to do.
You'll focus on the opposite, on not doing that.
I do the exact opposite because really, after all, go screw yourself. That's
my time, my place.
So, and I know that the people that I'm sponsoring also had that in them. So I'm not naive in that regard, but they do get to figure out whether or not they're going to fold and bunch their toilet paper in the morning. They're not going to call me with that question because I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah. Mostly in person or online sponsees? Both.
Yeah, I sponsor.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
I'm down from my high. The most I ever sponsor is like 34, I think. But when my wife left, my wife left, I started feeling some sort of way. I was all alone in this massive house. I've been kind of successful in my life as a result of Narcotics Anonymous. And so what I did, I knew the answer. What I did is I went out and I found 5 guys, and we all went through their first year together. And it was a lot of phone calls, a lot of work. One of the guys actually finished his 12th step the week he was celebrating his first year anniversary, and all 5 of them celebrated their first year anniversary. They're not all 5 clean today, but it was exactly what I needed. I needed to get outside of myself. I needed to get outside of my pain and my disappointment and feeling like I had bet on the wrong player. Um, I felt betrayed, and I was sad. And then she took my son, and that became sadder. It's a longer story than I can go into here, but fortunately, he's still alive. And we do what we got to do. But if you're having challenges in your life, go find a newcomer. Go find a newcomer. Help somebody. It takes
Time flies when you're helping a newcomer. I've been on the phone all night in a meeting, all night with people just struggling, and you don't like time doesn't matter at that point. When you're with that unconditional love of that newcomer coming in, because that's what we were given that, right? We were once that person at one form or another. So I'm always reminded, man, when a newcomer comes in and says, "I got less than a day clean," if I could pick them up virtually, I would pick them up and carry them around the room.
Absolutely. But I got to tell you that we're talking about trust. I've had some non-trustworthy sponsors over the years, and I've had 14 sponsors. The sponsor I have now, he has 44 years clean. I've known him for 32 years, and he's absolute aces. Just an awesome, awesome guy. And my last sponsor, I had him for 15 or 16 years, and he's an awesome guy too. And I've had some incredible men dedicate time out of their lives for me. I've also had some assholes.
What do you mean by untrustworthy sponsor? What how do you feel you were betrayed or your trust was broken? Like confidentiality or
No,
by
when people talk
guidance?
about other people after meetings or whatever, and that person runs back to me and says, "You know what that guy says," and
Oh,
Can't keep a secret.
yep.
same secret. But in that scenario, um, we were also starting out. We didn't know how to sponsor. There was no sponsorship pamphlet. There was no sponsorship books. There's none of that stuff. We were winging it, and so I let them live. But what I did learn is it's more important for me to be the solution to a perceived deficit within recovery than to start popping off about it in a meeting where there might be a newcomer and disenfranchise them from the potential of achieving this process.
Breaking the unity.
It's
Breaking the
not
unity.
cool. Not
Yep.
cool. And you all have seen it. You've seen people date somebody in the rooms, they break up, and now they're trashing that person in meetings.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously? That
Yeah.
is so outside the realm of what we deal with.
Yes. We do a lot of praying to pray these newcomers into these rooms. Let's watch how we communicate, right, in these rooms with each other, whether it's interpersonal relationships or whatever. Like, don't push them out. We just pray them in.
Yeah.
The sponsor is taking time out of his life, even if it's for one phone call, to dedicate to me. I have a debt of gratitude now to that person. I may not be able to stand them. I may, I would never be caught dead having dinner with them, and they're not coming over to my house for the holidays. But what is going to happen is I'm going to manifest the gratitude by keeping my mouth shut about what I perceive as their deficits. And I'm going to move on to my next sponsor. I've got a new sponsor just to refresh. I've changed where I was living and here on Long Island. And it was just more convenient to be with somebody a little bit closer. And now it doesn't really matter because of what we have here, this miracle that we have.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And that's why I'm able to sponsor a couple of guys in Texas, guy in New Jersey. They're all over. I've sponsored guys in South Africa. It's just a wonderful process. And, successful sponsorship results in the sponsor staying clean. I don't know if you know that little secret.
It's supposed to cause the largest immunity from addiction is in intensive work with another addict.
Yeah, it's the heart of our program. It's the core.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. And one addict helping another. We talk about it being without parallel. I haven't found anything that can replace it. But,
and it's because we're not, and it's, even if we are doctors in these rooms, Chris, that's not our role in here. And it's precisely because we're not doctors and we sink ourselves into this literature that it works, right? It gives me that accountability factor with somebody just coming in here, right? Because we're all kind of singing from that same hymn book a little bit.
Totally agree with you. Totally. It's we're not doctors, we're not attorneys, we're not financial advisors, we're not marriage counselors.
We're addicts. We're all addicts.
I mean, I was in a holding cell at one point before I got into recovery, and everybody in there seemed like they were attorneys. They all knew exactly what I could do, but they were sitting in the same cell I was. I just need to make sure that if I'm speaking something that's the truth, to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you a question. What elements of early recovery required trust before faith was there? And please explain.
Man, I had to have trust in the program before anything. When I was new into the rooms, when I left rehab and I found these rooms, because I didn't have anywhere else to go. When I was in rehab, they tell you your disease is doing push-ups and pull-ups outside the whole time, and I found out the hard way. I wanted to run back into rehab, Chris, and the doors were locked, right? And so I had to find these rooms. I got my ride home, and I had, like, my desperation. I was just a lost individual, and I found a couple rooms that I just sat in the back and I listened. And I put a lot of trust in the people at the beginning, right? Because I didn't know the program, right? We had read it in the inpatient facility I was in. I went to a meeting a day, but I still was hearing these traditions and steps, didn't know what they were. It was just all a bunch of, I was trying to lean into it. I just couldn't understand it. It was too much to take in with where my brain was at. And so I put a lot of stock and a lot of trust in the people of this program, and people are flawed. I realized that quick. Like, people are going to let you down, right? I don't care what position they are as it relates to you, or friend or foe, whatever. But people are flawed, and they'll let you down. But I realized quickly that if I put my stock into the program, if I put my trust into the program doesn't let you down. Like, this program will never let you down if you work it the right way, right? And you take some of these suggestions. And so I sat in the back, man, and I listened to learn and learn to listen, right? And I took everything in. I was a sponge. I soaked it in. I changed all my old people, playmates, playgrounds, and playthings, so to speak, right? I got a new career. I had to change it up completely. I put trust in the people to get me. That's that initial attraction rather than promotion, right? The people would welcome me in. I would go to that same meeting, and they would call me by my name, and I'm like, these guys remember me. Like, I felt special, right? And I had no other choice but to put the stock in the people. But I started seeing people that I really looked up to relapse, and I'm like, this is real. Like, this is real. I can either piss or get off the pot here. I got to sign up for life and go all in with this thing, or just go back to the way I was doing it. Like that's an easy way to go. Using drugs and taking that easy route is the easier way. But but something was in me, right? Like that spiritual connection. I talk about this a lot, Chris. Like, I used drugs for a long time as like an artificial means to gain that spiritual experience that we're all looking for. And now I have a practical means, right? I have these books. I had the step work. I have a practical means to get what we're all looking for. As a kid, we're like, we all know there's something going on, but we find it as we become adults, or we don't. We start doing drugs, and that conscious contact with whatever we're looking for is not there. We think it's there, but it's just the substances in our body. And so, yeah, I trust this program. I trust my program now that I'm coming up on like 3 years. So I've gotten a little bit of time. I've gotten a little time where like it's starting to become real. Like, this is going to be my life. My sponsor's got 36 years clean, and he comes to our meetings not to run his mouth and flap his gums, but to hear the message and sit in the meetings. I know I'm in the right place, Chris. When gentlemen like you come on here, you got 25 sponsees, like, and you're doing it, and like, I know for a fact, if I want to stay clean long term, I'm in the right place. So I trust this program. I trust everything that is in these books. That's been revised over and over. We don't only have one book now; we've got like 6. And I hate reading, Chris, and I love these books. I love these books, man. So I stay into that literature. What about you, Milan? Same question back to you. Because that was a great question.
So I feel that coming into treatment and recovery, because that kind of happened simultaneously for me. It was kind of knowing nothing about the program, going into a treatment center and diving in for all of their groups and exercises and everything. So the first thing for me was trust that I would be able to find some sort of happiness or serenity inside sobriety. Before, in all my white knuckling periods in the 17 years that I, fought powerlessness, because 37 years was my story of addiction. So for 20 years, I thought it was all just fine. I was like not even looking for any brake pedal anywhere. Like things just didn't culminate to a problem. For the bulk of that, I was single or had a couple relationships, and I feel that when you're with a partner in a house, you get a bit more of a reflection of when you're screwing up. Like, you know,
Real
like
time reflection.
well,
Yeah.
like you can be single by yourself and screwing up for a long time, and there's nobody like, hey, you pissed in the closet last night. Like, just saying, like you just might see a puddle in the morning and think it was your dog. Like, but anyway, embarrassing moment over. So in my white knuckling period, every time I was straight, I was just full of resentment, and a slight resentment and anger towards whoever I was quitting for because it wasn't for me. And I wasn't making good decisions at the end, and thinking that my body was an infallible car to drive into a cliff kind of thing was where it was going. And when my heart stopped and I realized that I really was powerless over my addiction, coming out of that evening and into life the next day, I knew that I needed a change. And, I hoped that I would be able to find some sort of happy or serene existence. I was looking for happy then. I didn't even know serenity existed at that point, to be honest. I really did not know how a serene moment of joy could feel because I was 11 or 0. I was on full or off, and I was always shooting for full. So even if I was going through a moment of 6 or 7, I was never present in that moment to know because I was trying to live for that future moment of a higher high. And coming in there, I watched. I went into treatment. And first of all, going into treatment, I thought I was like going to jail. Like I was picturing like we had a cell. I was like going to be in a cell. I'd be like, like I called the support workers like what did I call them, like the wardens or whatever. They're like, you're not.
Yeah, or the inmates.
Yeah, I called us the inmates, and but these people that had been there only like 4 to 6 weeks more than me, man, they were working on their steps. They were like smiling and joking around and laughing. And I was like, whoa, like it was 13 days after that kind of event had happened for me. But I still wasn't experiencing a whole lot of joy. You know, I had detoxed at home with a wife and a daughter in the house who hated me for what I had done recently, like as happy as they were that I lived, they were just like, until you go to treatment, we don't even fucking want to see you. And so it was like 13 days of just self-loathing and being loathed. Like there was no like, this is great. So when I got there, I was feeling pretty low about myself, and I was feeling pretty scared. And I got in the doors, and people were like, one of my friends, who's a good friend now, I call him my calibration brother, young Gabriel, who you've met on the meeting and other times. Um, he looked at me and he's like, "You're in the right place." And in that moment, I honestly trusted him. I was like, okay. I'm like, I'm in the right place. So I was like, one good thing had happened. I knew that I was where I should be, and it felt good because these guys like when it was time for step work in the day, it's kind of a 2 or 3 hour period in the afternoon there. Um, they were all studying. They were all trying to get the most they could out of this thing, and so it was a great example. So then that gave me some trust in the process. Like it was like, okay, look at they're doing way better than me, and this is what they're doing, you know. And so I was just like, okay, I was good at school when I was a kid. I went to university and, applied myself in some pretty hard courses for a bit, but, like I knew how to apply myself to learning something. And, and, and I always felt that learning was good. My mom was a teacher. To me, like I was never one of those kids who said, oh, like school's stupid, like I kind of liked having the tools of my mind, like, and, recovery is a spiritual experience, but in order to intake it, you have to either listen or read or something in order to get that information into you. And right away, the concept of surrender was like putting the trust of that fight being not mine anymore. And man, that was like my first pink cloud because I literally just got to get rid of so much static electricity noise in my brain that was like pick up, use, keep using, pick up, use. Like I would want to use while I was using, like because I was like, maybe I'm not using enough. Like in that moment, it was like there was already the cycle of thought for the next moment. And it, to have that removed with my surrender was like, woo, like there was just so much shit that wasn't chattering in my head, like endlessly chattering. And if the program had stopped right there, honestly, I would have been even just satisfied right at that point. But that, like that was just the start, and then to to see my own defects revealed to me in my step 4, 5, and 6, that to me allowed me to see that a lot of bad things inside my pain could be removed. Like I've said it before on this show, but when I did my step 5, I experienced the first guilt-free day and a half of my life after that, like of my whole life.
That was your turning point right there.
Like that was like tears of joy spilling for almost like every time I would think about it, which was all the time. Anyway, I think I've gone long enough on that, though. I feel like I don't like to monologue for too long, and I think that was, my earliest kind of moments inside recovery. And
I was gonna ask Mr. Chris a question, then see if he had a
yeah,
question maybe for us. I just have a really
yeah.
quick question for you, sir. So at what point in your recovery, because you've been around for a few just for today's, right? Um, like was there a point where you found yourself more comfortable trusting like your own decisions and that process of coming to those decisions, have they changed like since when you got into the rooms to now? I mean, I would think they would have, the process of coming to those decisions and trusting your own decisions.
Very good question. My process is an ongoing process. I have not reached a destination. At least I hope I haven't, because then it's game over. But I'm still on a journey, and my recovery is morphing and changing depending on what input I put into my computer. It's what I get back out. Um, I feel fairly confident making decisions these days because I've made a lot of bad decisions to get me here. And I've made, I'm not powerless over my choices. No. Um, but I do have, and we in recovery do have an opportunity to access groups of advisors. And so I'm not a solo show. There's a whole cast um, that's involved in my life. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor, and and I have great, 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 great grand sponsees, and that's 5 levels. I think maybe 5 or 6 levels we're in. We're like a virus.
You got an army, a little
Well,
army going on.
no, because
That's a great recovery
lost the
army,
war,
man.
dude. We lost the war. So I don't need
We did, no doubt.
Yeah, I like the family tree versus the army.
medics.
Yeah. Terrible wording.
It's okay, man. It's all right. But yeah, so this is a wonderful thing that I think there are a lot of things that I know now that I'm glad I know now because I put the effort in and I spent that time on the phone. Talks about inner literature, that one extra minute on the phone can save a life, and I've become kind of a fireman here. I run towards the problem, and I live in New York, and I don't know if y'all are aware of how it is here in New York, but our general greeting is, "Hey, how you doing?" And nobody wants to hear the answer.
Terrible.
The appropriate response is, "How you doing?" And you just keep walking.
And it's the tone in the way you say it, and you really know how they're doing, right? It's like, how you doing? No, how you doing? Like,
No, we don't
How
really
you
care.
doing?
We don't
they
care how you.
don't even care.
No.
Hey,
This is short, man.
you touched on something really cool, Chris, that I heard early on in my recovery about. It's like the fireman analogy, a firefighter analogy. It doesn't matter who gets out of the burning building first, right? As long as we all get out of that burning building, right? And that's, us getting out of addiction. But it takes a different kind of person to suit back up and go back in that burning building and to pull motherfuckers out, dude. It takes a different kind of individual to do that.
In every one of us, that's what it takes. And
That's
we
true.
in recovery are that different kind of person. To exempt ourselves from the process of helping another addict is not what this is about, as far as I can tell. This is about, regardless of what's going on in my head, that guy still needs my help. And that, being the sponsor that I wish I had found when I first got here is what I'm trying to do. Being the solution, being that person that at a break or at the end of the meetings. I know a lot of people in recovery. I got thousands of phone numbers. I can't call them possibly, but I know who they are when they call me. But at the end of a meeting, it might be 5, 6, 7, 8 of us sitting around talking after a meeting, because it might have been a couple of weeks since we've seen each other. And yet there's that guy standing over by the fence, and he's smoking that cigarette, and he's wondering, how the hell can this help him?
Yeah.
He's making a decision. That's what he's doing. He's deciding that screw this. I'm checking out, and we will never know about it. So unless I take personal responsibility and keep my head on a swivel at breaks or at the ends of meetings for that guy, then I'm never going to know that he needed help. So I know how they are, because I was that guy. I was so frightened, so, dismissive, so conspiracy theory kind of thing, just twisted stuff.
There's so many delusions and psychosis at the end of
Nobody
addiction
can
that
interrupt that process. I'm free for, like living alone.
And there's your awareness
Not
now,
being in
Chris.
a
You're
closet.
aware of all that around you.
Yeah, not being in a closet.
I think that that's a big part of what we're trying to do here, is to show how your life can develop into something positive. And I'm trying to pull people onto the show that I feel do are an example of freedom rising in themselves due to their recovery. And instantly when I met you, I connected with you, Chris. Like, I remember meeting you, and it was just like, hey, I like you a lot. I like you. I want some more of that guy.
Message, man.
Yeah.
Strong.
And but it's it's not up to us to like fake an orgasm for them so that it looks like sex is good, but it's up to us. But it is up to us not to hide the beautiful parts of our life that we have from recovery. You know, like we can't shit talk our lives down to go down to someone's level. We have to put our hand down if they're reaching up. You know.
Well, if I may, just for a second, on
Mm,
there's a little bit more to that story that I was telling. That
yep.
because I'm keeping my head on a swivel and I spot that guy over there. I've been doing this a long time and people know what I'm about. So I will start walking to that guy because clicks kill addicts.
Yeah.
They will kill. They're already
Yeah.
feeling apart from everything in their lives.
Yeah.
Success, joy, happiness, apart from it.
Yeah.
So I will start walking over to that guy. And you know what happens? Whoever I was talking to, they start following me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whether it's two, three, four, five guys, and sometimes it can probably from their perspective seem a little imposing. But what ends up happening is we're going to get his phone number and we're going to give him ours. And we're not going to expect him to call us tomorrow because he's not going to. But we're going to call him tomorrow. And if he picks up the phone, then, maybe something happens. Maybe he stays clean for another day. We're going to take him to the diner. We're going to buy him some food, just like we did when we started. We're going to get him a pack of cigarettes. And I don't care that they cost $15 a pack in New York. If he has vomited on himself or he's been incontinent, we're going to hug him anyway because I have a washing machine and I can wash my clothes. The hug is more important. The hug may save his life. That may be the first human contact he's had in years.
Or ever. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I realized this, Chris, to go to your point, I realized something that like it's our purpose is not like what we do. It's what happens to other people around us when we do what we do, right? When you do what you do, right? Like the people follow you because you set an example, right? It's not about telling people to live like you live. It's about setting that example, staying in your own lane, right? And keeping your side of the street clean. But then people want to live like that. Like you have something that they want. People want to act that way naturally, right? Goodwill,
I
you
hope so.
know?
Also, I hope people are doing that not because they see me doing it, but because that they understand that that's what we do.
Right. And you learn that from somebody,
If
and
I
it's just the
win the
right way
race
to act.
more to the newcomer, then you just need to speed up a little bit.
You know, but
Yeah.
some people may need that verbally as well as physically pointed out. Like, you know, sometimes somebody could be still so far inside themselves in their selfishness that they don't realize that they need to do that. And I've had somebody say something to me like, hey, you know, like, let's do that. And I was like, oh, that is a really good thing to do. And then I'm like, and afterwards, I'm like, man, I'm really grateful that that guy told me to do that because I just wasn't thinking in that way at all. You know, like, I think
It does take words to change it, to create an epiphany. I agree with you.
yeah,
It
like
takes
I just, you
some
know, I
knowledge
think,
I don't have to educate me.
mm, I don't have to think of everything to be able to learn about it. You know, like I didn't invent the car. I didn't invent the wheel, but I sure like riding a car. You know, and if you show me what a car is versus a wheel, I'll jump in the car and ride every time. Like you know, it's one of the benefits of of sponsorship. Really, like right now for me, actually, I'm having my sponsor come on this show tomorrow, but you know, we sit sometimes and talk about sponsorship, and you know, and I get to kind of have some of his wisdom imparted on to me, you know, like, and I can discuss maybe some of my sponsoring troubles, you know, and I love that, and you know, because I'm not with him and his sponsee to actually see that. So talking about that for growth is kind of essential at this point in my development.
I personally didn't realize how important the sponsor-sponsee relationship was until I got a couple of sponsees of my own. You know, I knew having to have a sponsor was very important, and finding that right one took a little while to get that right one. And now I'm blessed, right? I'm blessed to have him. But until I got a couple of my own and went through some of the hardships, one of them went back out. I had 3 at one point. Now I have 2 now. But I would do anything for those men. And when they call me, I don't care what kind of mind frame I'm in. I'm in it to win it with them.
Yeah,
Like it's love, man. Love. When I'm doing something that I love, it's passion, right? If I'm doing something I don't like to do, it's stressful, right? Like we learn to love these people and our fellow addicts in these rooms, and some of them we really take to, and then they trust us to guide them through these steps, and I don't take that shit for granted, man. I put a lot of love in these kids. I mean, even if I'm not sponsoring them, if they're in my home group or whatever, I just see them in a group. I'm always spreading love. Love and hope are the only 2 spiritual principles we can give to each other, Chris. Like, we can't give each other honesty. We can't give each other open-mindedness, but we can give each other hope and brotherly love, which is what we do in these meetings.
Which is exactly what's essential in order for this thing to save the life of an addict 100 years from now.
Yes.
Because love grows on itself. Love grows exponentially. If I put it out, then it tends to build.
Yes.
If I put out derisiveness and condescension, that's also going to build. Because when the older we get in recovery, the more we're getting spotlighted by the newcomer.
Yeah.
We're on our phone in a physical meeting. If we're having sidebar conversations. If we're getting up and having 15 cups of coffee, if we're going out and smoking 10 cigarettes during the meeting, or we go out during the break and we don't come back. All those things are being scoped by the newcomer. So it doesn't matter how I behave. Even though I want to go talk to that guy at the break and not come back in, not maliciously. It's I haven't seen him in forever, but I have a primary purpose here.
It's the optics. Yeah.
It really is optics. You're not kidding.
Well, we lead by example, not by words. Parenthood really taught me that, is that you could say whatever all day long, but people will see your actions, and that's the example you really set.
Yeah. But what works for me might not work for them. So that's why we have, I encourage people to have their own experience. And that's why telling somebody what to do doesn't work.
It's trying to point them to these meetings and the God of their understanding really is what we're doing.
Right. Or they're no God whatsoever.
Right, exactly.
6 of one of our new pieces of literature, it describes that. Everybody gets to play here. There are no bench warmers. Every single person is valuable. And I don't care if they're drooling, sitting in the corner, going, it doesn't matter. That guy is just as important as Jimmy K.
Right. If he has the desire, right, and then he's got something, he wants to look to something that's just not him or her herself, right?
Everybody gets a piece of this pie.
If someone has a resistance to God or higher power, go in the book and replace God or higher power with the word acceptance, and you can still read that book. Try it one day.
Or just replace God with higher power.
We've done this, but I'm just saying that we have identified in our text what had not been identified previously. The journey continues. And it was an epiphany. And actually, there's a reprint, a flyer version to be read at meetings that we started reading in the New Zealand marathon meeting.
Can you tell us about it? Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, it's on page 56.
Oh, it's already in there. Okay, I didn't know. Okay, I mean,
on page 56 of journal, and it kind of lays it out, and that's in order for somebody to trust this process, I have to make it available to all forms of the addict, and I have to make sure that I'm not censoring, somebody else's process in my process. And it's a kind of knife edge there sometimes, because you get people that are tasked by their belief to proselytize. But this is not the place. This is not the place. And so that's what you've heard people share. I have a higher power who I choose to call X. Well, that's disinclusive. That does not speak to our unity. That speaks to your ego, that you have to tout what you're doing so much that it might exclude that person who may be you know, a firm believer in Islam or a Buddhist or
This talks about atheism, atheists in here. Yeah.
it could be a Jewish person, you know. And so we need to be all inclusive. And when we share, we need to make sure that we're keeping those doors open for the people that are not mainstream and quite frankly, coming here an atheist and having, the experience that I had, and it doesn't matter what the hell my higher power is. It has made it possible for me to stay clean for today so far.
Yeah. I want to read. Can I read this quick excerpt out of here that I think you were referring to?
Yeah, are we allowed to?
Yeah, absolutely. This is out of the Living Clean.
We neither promote nor demote Narcotics Anonymous.
Right.
This is Andrew's personal recovery.
Films is what I'm talking about.
Correct. No, yeah, this is fine. We are not endorsed by anybody.
Right. Okay.
We find a way to surrender, but that does not mean we all come to believe in God. Many of our members have been clean for years as atheists. For some of us, coming to believe in NA can accommodate our atheism as has itself been a leap of faith. We are welcome no matter what we believe, and it has no opinion on how our members define or practice spirituality. So it just kind of touches on what you said.
Going, the next sentence is
yeah. Our individual challenge is to find a definition of spirituality that makes sense to us. By listening carefully with an open mind to a range of members' opinions and experiences, we form our own understanding, and we can use in our own recovery.
Damn, that's it. Yeah. That's mic drop right there.
That is that. I have it highlighted. Hell yeah, man! I love it.
And so all forms of the attic get to play. That's what we've come to the conclusion of. But all forms of the attic are not going to trust.
Yeah,
they're just not. And there's some people that are not going to trust, regardless of what we do, regardless of how we behave. And it's not up to me to sway them or convince them that they need to trust me, because in so doing, now I'm pitching them.
Yeah.
And now it's a con from their perspective. And so all I need to do is be as honest as I can be about, what I'm about and what I've done. That's why we share our experience, strength, and hope with each other. That's why we don't tell other people what to do. That's why we don't make suggestions without having a personal experience relating to it. We don't guess, because we kill addicts with our guesses.
And they do say honest sharing in our meetings is one of the highest form of prayers in our fellowship as well. When we come on here, we share honestly with each other. It allows our hearts to connect, right? And that's how we find connection in this world of like, we want to, our brains want us isolated, man, and alone. So Chris, did you want to maybe run a question by one of us, or a round table question, or did you have a question for any of us?
Why do you trust your sponsor?
Do you want me to go? I'll go first. So I have a sponsor who has an NA sponsor, who has an NA sponsor. He's been 36 years clean. He's an amazing spiritual individual. I trust him. I trust him with everything, Chris. Why? Well, because he's honest with me, and he calls me out on my bullshit, and he works the steps with me, and he goes into these questions in a way where it really helps me understand my life. And every time I'm with him, I feel more connected to my higher power. Every time I'm even in the same room as him, I feel more connected to the God of my understanding, and I can't explain it. He's not my God or anything, huh?
You feel safe with him.
Yes, I feel extremely safe with him, and I can tell him anything. And I didn't think I'd be able to come into a relationship like that in these rooms. I'd heard about that sponsorship relationship, but I didn't know at what lengths it could be until you start working this step work and you start developing a relationship with that sponsor. We're not up here just getting a sponsor at our first meeting. Guys, that's not what we're looking for in this program. You gotta get out there, let it be known that you need a sponsor, and tell about yourself and tell about your struggles, and people will feel connected to you, and that sponsor will drop into your lap. But I connected with him immediately. He was in he came to my home group and spoke, and then we maintained a relationship, and I asked him to be my sponsor, and he for about a week he made me call him, and we just really got to know each other, and prayed on it, prayed with each other, read some literature together. We read the sponsorship IP together. You read, there's certain things that's like an interview process. That sponsorship IP is amazing. If you don't have a sponsor, or if you're a sponsor looking to have sponsees, have that with you. You can read that with your potential sponsees or sponsors, and you can really get an understanding of what each one of y'all are looking for without going into it blindly. When I first started sponsoring people, I had a woman sponsee that she was just a really nice girl, and nice lady in our meetings, and I felt a connection to her. I felt like I could help her. And then I realized that she was pregnant, and she was a woman, and I didn't have any experience in anything that she was going through at that point, and I was well over my head, and we were just not on the right terms, and it was like an extreme learning experience, right? And yeah, it's yeah, it was an experience. Let's just say that. She's doing good though, and we still maintain a relationship today. And we're accountability partners, but and we're in the same home group. But it's wild, man. It's just goes to show what we put ourselves into, just to learn. I think it's God put me through that so I could learn something. So
Cool. Milan, why do you trust your sponsor?
Okay, so my sponsor I met while I was in treatment at one of the out of treatment center meetings that we went to, and I saw him once at this meeting. He gave a share that right at the point that I was at in my step work in the treatment was kind of really relevant of where I would like my mindset in recovery to go. And it was, like I I require someone that's going to go deep on philosophy with me sometimes. And I came out of treatment and I never saw him again anyway while I was in treatment. And when I came out, I met another person. I had this other sponsor for a couple months, and then I had an idiot for a sponsor for 2 months, which was myself. Um, and but then one of the guys in my in-person home group was taking his second year cake, and it turns out that this guy I had met, we'll call him John because that's his name, and but anyway, he was his sponsor, and so I went up to him at the meeting, and I said, hey, I've actually been hoping to run into you. And I said, are you taking on sponsees? And this was before I knew he was the guy with the cakes sponsor. And he's like, not really, you know. And then we're going through the meeting. And then he comes to me later on. He said, okay, well, he said, I'd be into us getting together for a coffee for an hour. He said, I've just learned enough now that it's like we kind of need to see if we're going to be able to spend time together. And I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, because I do think that a sponsorship is a fair commitment of interaction with someone. And if it's not going to work out, then, and also too, what I found out later on was he likes to do that to see if someone is actually an addict or an alcoholic, like to go through the, like whether somebody is actually,
it's your credit check.
well, if someone's not just kind of like a normie
Yeah,
in an addict's clothing. And it was anyway.
it's
uh,
strange.
yeah, but it was good, and him and I got along, and I really enjoyed going through the steps with him, and so my trust has built in those times where I was getting what I needed inside my journey for the guidance through the steps, and for being able, to sort of continue along my learning of the program with someone like I've come to be able to depend on his knowledge of the steps and the program and for what I need. And I feel that, he's been really honest with me kind of about his experience of addiction and coming into the steps. And I feel that I've had like, real acceptance from his side of my faults and everything that I was going through. So long and the short of it is because I've never felt betrayed by him
Cool.
in intention or action. And what about you with your sponsor?
Well, I've had quite a few of them.
But the
Like,
one right now.
well, I've known him for 32 years. I knew him before I relapsed, 92. My
Hmm.
parents moved up here to Long Island, and he'd moved up from Baltimore. And we got to know each other from going to meetings, and we were going to like meetings. And back, 31 years ago, a guy with 12 years clean was like, the guru kind of guy. And there were people with more time, not much more, like a year more, maybe. And but I knew that his story was amazing. He came out of a facility and at the age of 18 and stayed clean, and that was just baffling to me in and of itself. So uh, he became a senior scientist for a major international corporation out of that facility, and has recently retired, and he's written software programs for NA.
Wow,
There are over
that's awesome.
40,000 meetings that use his search engine, uh, to find meetings. And he basically gave it to him. If you ever see it, it's BMLT. And he's written another one that he just climbed out of beta for the Apple platform. He writes Apple, but he wrote BMLT for, um, NA, because and actually, if you go on na-virtual.com, look at the bottom of the page, it says powered by BMLT. That's his program that he.
That's where I've seen it. That's where I've seen it on virtual.
Yeah,
I click through that every single day. I come on the meeting.
Exactly. And then there's NA dash, or there's na.virtual.org. That's the NA's list that also uses the BMLT program.
Mm-hmm.
He just gave it. And there's a company that manages, he can't manage it anymore because it's gotten so big. But
Wow.
I think
Ongoing service.
knowing that he's not bullshit, knowing that when he does, and we just have conversations. I talk to him about every week, and we just have conversations. He's very interested in the history of Narcotics Anonymous, as am I. I mean, we're in our 71st year. October 5th is the anniversary of our first meeting. They say in our literature, July of 1953 is when we formed what's now known as Narcotics Anonymous, but we didn't have our first meeting until October 5th of 1953. So,
you still working step work, Chris, with that sponsor?
With him, not necessarily. Yes. I just switched over 4 months ago.
Okay. Cool.
But I've known him forever. So, my sponsor, I just need something. I needed to freshen it up.
Yeah.
And I'll do whatever it takes to stay clean.
I've heard you get to a certain amount of time and it's almost like y'all sponsor each other.
Well, that's true. I sponsor guys with 40 plus.
Right. And it's like whoever's helping whoever at that point, they're the sponsee at that point, right? Whoever's being helped.
The most satisfying thing I do is sponsor that newcomer. And I got to tell you, I get low calls on phone calls. I will go hunting. I will. I'll go to a newcomers meeting and I'll, start talking to people, and I'll ask them, do you have a sponsor? Because I need the phone calls. I need the connection.
You don't see that a lot anymore. I wish we'd see that more often.
My in-person meeting on Monday nights is called Monday Night Beginners. And so if somebody's looking up for our city, like, how do I get into the program, whatever, they see Monday Night Beginners, they're like, oh, I start here. So people literally come to our meeting like it's beginners. Like, it's actually a really good idea to have the word beginners in a title for a meeting if you want new people to come. That's what I was, and so a lot of the old timers in our town, when they do need a sponsee, they'll come in for a meeting because it's the most likely meeting to have newcomers. The one that says beginners.
There are a couple of meetings out there where you have to have 20 years to share. There's one in Pennsylvania that I know of, and there's another one in California that I know of. And that's where newcomers tend to go find their sponsors.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, I don't like the exclusionary aspect of it. 'Cause, you have to have this in order to do that.
Yeah.
But I do like when, groups identify themselves as beginners meetings, because I'm going to go there when I need some phone calls.
Yeah.
And I'll step to somebody and I'll say, listen, do you have a sponsor? And they'll say, no, of course, no, because they don't know what I'm talking about. I'll say, listen, it's just a guide, somebody to introduce you around, somebody to talk to while you're trying to figure all this stuff out. I said, here's my phone number. I'm going to get your phone number, and I'm going to ask you to please call me before 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. You can do that, can't you? And they say yes. And they don't mean it, but they say that.
And how do you deal with those expectations, Chris? Because if you have so many sponsees, I know if let's say I have 3, one went back out. I thought he was dead. We couldn't get a hold of him. I thought he was in jail or in the hospital. So it messed with me. How do you deal with those expectations of like, some of them are doing better than others. Some of them are actually doing what you suggest. Some aren't. Like, how do you? Yeah.
Wash, rinse, repeat. We do it again, eventually
inconsistent,
less rocked when we have somebody that checks out. I've lost a lot of people. I mean, I've never seen anybody too stupid to get this program.
They say the stupider you are, the better you are in this program.
We have buried an awful lot of smart people.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Very good point.
I'll talk myself back faster than I will talk myself into recovery.
Yeah. If you're looking for reasons why it's going to work, you're going to find them. If you're looking for reasons why it's not going to work, you're going to find them.
My sponsor says, if you believe this will work for you, or if you believe this won't work for you, you're right.
And how free do you want to be? Mine goes, how free do you want to be? And I go, yes.
The freest. Yes. I'll take the freest.
Yes. I don't even know how to answer that question. Then he goes, and I'll come to him with the wildest shit, and he'll go, Andrew, did you pray for him? Did you pray about it? And I'll go, no. And then we pray, right? And and I'm learning to to where I can pray first before I call him. He's a very busy man, right? And a lot of times if I pray about it, it works. I'm having a relationship with this thing now, right? Because I've been clean for a little while. I'm having that conscious contact. I'm doing goodwill when nobody's looking or when anybody's looking, and I'm making amends to myself. It makes me feel better, right? It makes me hold my head up higher. It makes me hold my shoulders back a little bit farther, right? And so it gives me confidence that I can be not a normie, but an upstanding citizen and not be leeching off society like I was back then. So yeah, man, this has been fun. I really had a good time. Milan, you got anything else you want to run past us?
I think I'm good. You got another point you want to share or anything you want to say to the audience out there, Chris?
Me?
Yeah. They hear from us all the time, but you're our special guest today.
One of the things that I do mention at the end of when I'm sharing it at a meeting or whatever, I had to learn how to look for reasons to stay here because I had a built-in reasoner that wanted me to not stay here. So I am the architect of my own success, and I am the architect of my own demise. I don't have the cognitive right to blame anybody for my success or failure here. It'll be because of me. And if it's to be, it's up to me. So and they never promised to open up the gates of heaven and let me in. They damn sure open up the gates of hell and let me out. And now that I have that key, I need to show a newcomer how to do the same thing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I heard somebody say to touch on to that spiritual or religion is for people who don't want to go to hell, and spirituality is for people who have been there and don't want to go back. And that's why this is a spiritual, not religious program, right? We've been there. We've been to hell. We don't want to go back. So
that was beautiful,
guys.
That was fun.
I'm really grateful. I started with this and I'm finishing with it though. I love you guys. I'm really grateful for you coming on here, Chris. I'm hoping
you,
that
Chris.
maybe, if you want to come back again sometime, we'd love to have you again. And even if, if you wanted to come back on with one of your friends who's, another old timer, we could have four of us on for a topic. That could be quite exciting.
Yeah.
If you like what you've seen, please subscribe, share, and like this podcast. Help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. Please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we're hoping to create slideshows of the Freedom Rising in your lives. So please send any photos of you flourishing in your life as a result of your recovery. Tune in next episode for more recovery fun. See you later, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Love you. Any time of day.